The murders of Guy and Laura Mills and Joel Druger in Breezewood, Pennsylvania gave investigators their first big break in the case. A very vigilant neighbor wrote down the registration number of a vehicle that was parked near the Mills home.
Come down the valley with me. Come down where darkness came to be. Come down, the story still told. The night the shotgun slayer took hold. Come down the valley with me. No stranger thing has happened, you see. Come down, so brazen and bold. The night the shotgun slayer took hold.
From this, investigators now have a name: Edward Arthur Surratt. But many questions remain. To gain information on their new suspect, the Pennsylvania State Police put surveillance on Surratt, who happens to be living right here in Aliquippa.
Once they kind of keyed in on him, I think the key investigator was Frank Keenan, and Bob Vizdak worked it. They wanted surveillance done on Surratt. So I think there was 6 of us on the vice detail, and we had undercover cars and everything, and we would do surveillance on him certain times of the day. We would follow him from his residence. He would go to church on Sundays, and he would come out of church, and he would go around the block. Another car would be waiting for him to come around, and he would totally change his appearance with wigs and makeup, and it didn't look like the same guy. We were trying to see if he was going to go and maybe commit another crime or something, and just seeing who his acquaintances were, if he had any, but he was a loner.
Just across the river from Aliquippa is the Baden residence of John and Catherine Shelkins. John is a steel worker, and his wife, she's a waitress at the Eaton Park in Harmony Township.
My dad was a relatively easygoing man, very good sense of humor, easy to get along with. He had 7 sisters, no brothers. I didn't have a brother. So even though he was the boss, and I knew that, we also kind of transcended that. You know, a lot of ways we're like brothers too. You know, a lot of the ribbing and, you know, teasing each other. My mother was a little different. She was somewhat the other side of the coin. She was very concerned about taking care of her family. She was a little more high-strung. I mean, she could put her foot down when she wanted to.
At the start of 1978, people living in Beaver County and in the surrounding areas are well aware that there is a serial killer on the loose. John and Catherine Shelkins had talked about the possibility of a stranger entering their home.
What had happened, again, since this had built up from October, and it began to get quite well known that usually the male was taken out right away, killed, and then the woman, some of them weren't found at all. Rumors that they had been mutilated to some extent, at least sexually assaulted. So as everyone knew, as it came towards Friday, you know, you'd already be on edge. And I do specifically recall him telling her that if something ever happened, that she should refuse to go out the door. That was probably your best chance. You know, once he had the woman out of the house, it was over, you know, and it wasn't going to be a pretty picture.
On the night of January 7th, 1978, through a basement door, an intruder enters the Shelkins home. Both John and Catherine are asleep in their living room. The intruder immediately shoots 56-year-old John in the chest.
He was immediately shot. The shotgun was put right up to him and he was shot. And again, died instantly. Mrs. Shelkins fought.
Catherine Shelkins is brutally beaten, but refuses to leave the home with the attacker, just as her husband advised her to do. The assault is interrupted when there's a sound of somebody entering their home again. It is actually Catherine and John's daughter who is coming home from a night out on the town.
What happened was we had been out on a double date, dropped my sister off as I was facing down the street, turned around, started going back up, and then I'd stop and make sure she got to the door. I saw them get to the door, and the door was opening, so I left. And I lived maybe 2 miles away. 2.5. I get to the house and the phone's ringing. And I can't remember now for sure if I answered it or my wife, to be honest with you. That's where it got kind of crazy. But my sister, she had called from the house next door because the phone had been ripped out of the wall and said someone had broken in. I remember running downstairs, grabbed the shotgun, and drove down there. You know, then when I got there, some of the police were there, and I knew the man who had the ambulance. He owned a funeral home in Ambridge. He was a personal friend of mine. He tried to stop me from going into the house, but I kind of pushed past him, and my dad was at the far side of the living room. In a way, he was laying there as an unnatural position. He was laying, but you could tell it was kind of twisted a little bit. My mother was up, sitting in a chair. They were tending to her. Her face was just an absolute mess. And I remember her kind of, not really babbling, but she was talking fast, and I think she said something about my dad being dead, but I can't remember exactly, because she was in shock. She reached for the phone, I know one time. That's when he pulled the phone out of the wall, kicked her in the nose. Her nose was broken very badly. Face was totally black. I mean, her breasts were absolutely just black. I mean, not even black and blue, black. Evidently what happened was just before my sister knocked on the door, although I kept insisting she wasn't going to go out, she did remember him putting his foot on her neck to get her to pass out. She remembers blacking out, and I guess at that time was when my sister came home, and he ran out the cellar door, and that's what saved my mother.
Catherine is taken to the hospital where investigators are very eager to talk with their first living witness. But after such a brutal and traumatic event, Catherine does her very best to describe the man who attacked her.
We were excited over the fact that we had a live witness that, we could have done something with. But I think Mrs. Shelkins obviously suffered the trauma that she did. And she wasn't a very good witness, to be quite honest with you.
My mother initially identified him as a white man, which, may sound kind of strange at first, but he was relatively light. She only saw him from here up because he had a bandana on. She did say that the man had a wig on, although I know later on she did say that he wasn't white.
Despite Catherine describing her attacker as white, investigators don't let that narrow their search.
Hindsight, looking back almost 40 years ago, before we had DNA, we still had a lot of what we call trace evidence. When someone commits a crime, they leave something at the crime scene and they take something away with them. And what someone leaves, especially in a rape case in murder, they leave hairs, fibers, semen, sometimes saliva, sometimes perspiration, which were all potential DNA evidence, but unfortunately back then, we could only say they were consistent with a particular other crime scene. All of the homes were single-story, bungalow, ranch-type houses, and including the trailer in Beaver County. The hairs found at the scenes and semen found at the scenes of the rape victims was consistent with his type of blood. And the hairs, both body and pubic hairs, crime lab told us were similar to African American or Mediterranean. Once we got to see Ed Surratt and his photographs of different disguises and facial hair and his light complexion, we got off of the Caucasian.
We had quite a few photographs of him, and every time you got another photograph, he looked differently. I can still close my eyes and see him. At one point he would have almost like an afro, and then the next time it'd be a closely cropped hair. The mustache would change, the facial hair would change.
We also had some informants involved, and that helped us because we got to know some of Ed Surratt's daily routine.
We had a detective from the Beaver County Detectives who somehow got next to Mr. Surratt's wife, and I think his name was Tank Smith, if I remember correctly. And Tank was getting next to her, trying to get as much information as he could out of her. That was all obviously being fed to us as we were going on with our investigation.
Investigators from Allegheny County, Beaver County, and the state police congregate in Baden. They all recognize the similarities in the Shelkins case to the other cases that have happened in the area.
What the task force did for us was it modernized our ability to investigate by bringing in computers and things of that nature.
Which in 1977-78 was almost unheard of. Michigan State Police came in and showed us how to put information in because they were already using this computer. We were getting tips from so many people, it was unbelievable. I mean, this whole western Pennsylvania was on edge, and rightfully so.
Months will pass before another life is so brutally taken. All the while, police continue their investigation and continue to dig up information about their alleged serial killer. Join us for the next episode of Notorious when 2 more lives are taken and the state police attempt to arrest their suspect, but he makes a run for it.